Okay, the final week of CFL fantasy football is over. And so I'd like to begin this show with a paraphrase of a very famous quote. Goes like this: We are the champions. We are the champions. No time for losers, because we are the champions of the CFL fantasy world. Much less singing on the Rouge, White, and Blue after this. Welcome to the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast. My name is not Freddie Mercury. It is, in fact, Oz Davis, and I'm the co host of the show. Joining me, as always, is my co host, Joe Pritchard. Joe, how are you doing this week?
Good. I'm just hoping that there's no stat adjustments and that the claims we're making on this show
don't,
about the fantasy championship are going to be valid come Wednesday when they
don't,
become official.
don't do that. Don't do that.
It's a
They can't.
tight margin.
Yeah, it's like 2.7 points or something like that. Yeah, I just hope that this is foreshadowing that what this victory means is that Chad Kelly, you cannot win a championship with Chad Kelly as your quarterback. I hope that's what this proves. And so I guess with the stat adjustments, I hope they don't take away one of Bo Levi Mitchell's 5 touchdowns, because that is ultimately what made the difference. It was a battle of Bo versus Chad. Bo racked up something like 70 plus points in fantasy, and Chad had 67. So that was basically the margin of victory, was those two quarterbacks. And of course, in this week 20, we can, expect that not too many quarterbacks are playing for anything this week, and those that were kind of outclassed. The nice thing about being in the CFL Podcast Network Fantasy Football League is that the winner of the league gets to donate money to charity. And so, because honestly, folks, I did not expect to win this thing ever. So I gave my prize rights, I guess you could call it, to my co-host Joe Pritchard. Joe, tell us about the charity that Rouge, White, and Blue will be contributing to.
So the CFL Fans Fight Cancer has been going on for almost 20 years now. I think it
Mhm.
was 2006 was the first one, and if that's correct, I was at the first one. So I've been doing this a while. Um, yeah, it started off just like a small social, just a quick little get together. Like entry to the door was a cheap amount of money, and I think a couple of $1,000 got sent over to a cancer to a cancer charity. And this year, they're already over $40,000, and we haven't even got to the
Nice.
Grey Cup weekend yet.
Damn.
I mean, a
Wow.
lot of different early events. Chris doing his tour of the 9 stadiums, trying to set the Guinness World Record was part of it. He was carried around a bucket and got a ton of donations that way. There's been a lot of other events going on during the season. If you're following this show, you probably follow a lot of the people that are part of the cancer event. So yeah, I'm sure you've been seeing this ongoing, but if we're going to win a prize, it's going that way.
Okay,
Yep,
great, great.
and the main event is at I believe it's at the Shark Club this year for CFL Fans Fight Cancer in Vancouver for the Grey Cup. So I believe it's the Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. So
Okay,
of course, much more to come on that. I'm sure I'll have more details as we go
sure.
here. I'll
Yeah.
actually be able to plan ahead instead of, oh, where are we going with this? So I'm sure we'll be plugging that event as we go along here, closer to Grey Cup.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, we're probably going to be doing a short podcast this week. We'll probably be doing a short podcast next week too. This past week, we'd like to do the game wraps. This past week, geez, the last game ended this morning for me, relative time. This week, just three games, and realistically speaking, three blowouts. Three teams scored 30 or more points, and BC had 27 in their win. And just one more question, I think, just one more question about playoff seeding remains. Am I right, Joe?
That's it.
I'm jumping
The East is set.
right. Okay. Now, I'm jumping the gun a little bit on the playoff scenarios, but there's the thing this week, of course, Toronto and Ottawa were settled with that game. But really quick, the Hamilton Tiger Cats 42, Calgary Stampeders 20. Of course, this was the game that was completely irrelevant by any stretch of the imagination, no effect whatsoever. The story of the game clearly here was Bo Levy, 5 touchdown passes. He actually had 6 if you include the pick 6. But besides that, that was the only black mark on this incredible game by Bo Levy. Hamilton fans have got to be wondering, where was this for a lot of the season when he was, low energy enough to get benched at one point at 0-4. Um,
And it wasn't even really the offense's fault in the first place. The defense just was non existent for a while.
yeah, yeah. This team has always had the capacity to put up a lot of points. And they really picked on the Stamps in this game. And you talk about the defense. Well, the defense only gave up 13 in this game. So realistically, 1 touchdown. So pretty good. So, but of course, it's expected that Bo Levy is going to hit the road next season. I mean, are you are you still holding out that this was a bit of an audition for him to get that Stamps job back, Joe?
I would say, but given it was like 9 weeks since he took back over, and it's
Right.
been great ever since, I
Mm-hmm.
almost have to wonder: do they reconcile their differences, or does Scott Milanovic make a move for a quarterback he wants as opposed to the one he inherits?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Right.
it's still an open question, but it's not as open and shut as it was back on Labor Day, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That now there is a question, right? It was like before Labor Day, it was unquestionable. Yeah, of course, he's going to be on somebody else, some other team next year. Um, okay, all right. So that's who has the bye next week? This is
I
slipping my
believe
mind.
Ottawa does. No, BC does. BC does because they
BC
are
does.
now
Oh, that's right.
finished.
That's
They're
right.
finished at 9-9.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Yep. Okay, so fate is out of their hands. So Calgary Stampeders cannot go home yet. All right. There's more chance for Reggie Bingleton to score some more touchdowns. All right. So
They have,
second.
however, clinched the first overall pick, or at least earned it. I don't know if there's been a trade involved with that pick or
Yeah.
not yet. It's too early for me to be thinking CFL draft, but they're in the number one spot.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the playoffs yet.
Nope.
Right. Okay. So second game was this is quite a game. Toronto Argonauts 38, Ottawa Redblacks 31. I mean, for the Red Blacks, I asked about this on the show. We didn't know at the time. Justin Hardy was back, looked pretty good. Nick Hardison was back for the first time in forever, but no matter. Toronto scored 4 touchdowns on the first 4 drives and went up 28-6 at half. I mean, the suspense was over. Basically, I actually sat down to watch this thing until the end of the first half, and I said, "Well, that's it." I had picked a blowout on this show. Surprise, surprise, it wasn't a blowout. Toronto -6 still covered at the sports book, though. So I'm okay with that. Um, Not really surprised that Ottawa made it a game, at least on the scoreboard. They recovered the onside kick late. They played some good fourth quarter offense.
Two.
But if, as I've said all season, the Red Blacks are the smart team. They're the prepared team. They're the team that makes the most out of what they got because they don't play dumb. I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't have a second play in their bag for the onside kick. I wish they had tried something a bit more plausible because they might have pulled it off. I believe in these Red Blacks in this respect. Strategically, this is a good team.
Yeah, they play smart. It still feels like they're a little bit undermanned. I had higher expectations of the quarterback room behind Drew Brown going into the season.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it looks like Jeremiah Mazzoli might not be starter caliber anymore after all the injuries he's suffered. Because he started a few games in the recent past with Drew Brown out. Drew Brown trying to come back from the ankle injury too soon and getting re-injured.
Mm-hmm.
I do still think that they're a threat in the East semi if Drew Brown is healthy. Because this is his first start back. It took him a while to get moving, but once they got moving, they got moving.
They look good in the fourth.
Still picking Toronto in that East semi, regardless. But
I don't know.
Maybe a glimmer of hope for Ottawa. It's been like 4 to 6 weeks since they've really shown much. So I've been feeling for the Ottawa fans because they got to get hyped up about it. What, they were 8-3 at one point, I want to say.
Yeah.
And now they're down to 8-8, it just feels like more of the same from the past few years, these past few weeks. But if I'm going to give them a glimmer of hope, it's Drew Brown wasn't playing much. Look what they've done with Drew Brown in. He's had a few rough games. He's had a few great games. You have something to hope on, which is more than you can say for like the last 3-4 years before this. So I wouldn't get too down about your team, Ottawa, but I understand where those feelings are coming from.
Well, in my opinion, the other plus side of this game is that the Argos are starting to look terrifying here. Honestly, this is starting to look like the team that was, 16-2 last season. This is a scary looking team all of a sudden. I know your team is coming out of the West, but can't you see this team in the Grey Cup? Can't you see this team getting on enough of a roll here?
Totally could.
3 more games.
I was hoping it wouldn't happen until a change in quarterback would happen, but that's clearly they're going to be the bad guys of the CFL for the rest of the season, and until they get rid of Chad Kelly one way or the other, which could be next week, could be 3 years from now, who knows? But I know they're not winning a lot of people onto their side for games that they're not facing some team's rival anyway. So
right. With no horse in the race,
nobody's rooting for Toronto right now.
You're probably going to cheer against Toronto. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which again will make that Riders Argos Grey Cup really interesting.
I wonder how much I could sell my ticket for if that
happens. All right, so finally, we close out the week with BC Lions 24, Montreal Alouettes 3. Okay. Vernon Adams looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't this the way? As long as the Lions get out to a lead, as long as everything goes as planned, Vernon Adams looks like the poster boy for a CFL quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that was the situation here. It's just like they were never challenged, we didn't run with our second string on defense exclusively for Montreal, but a lot of guys that haven't seen a lot of playing time, guys like Lorenzo Burns. This guy was a first round pick a couple of years ago, but he hasn't even he debuted in week 16. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Terrell Richards. Terrell Richards was drafted in 2022, but he was out this year until week 13 after getting injured in week 1. So he hasn't played all year. Lorenzo Burns, I mean, here's a guy who debuted, CFL debut in week 16, and these guys were getting quality minutes. So can't really say that Montreal is playing with our best defense. I'm sure they're not showing a lot before the playoffs either. I was pleased to see that Ty Beverett did get the interception. But all right, so now here you are, your BC. All right, Vernon's going into the playoffs with a win as the quarterback at home, which has been a challenge for them this season. So, the obvious question is, what do you do in the playoffs? Who is your quarterback?
They've already said Vernon's the guy in the West semi. So,
Yeah. Oh,
yep.
okay.
Because Vernon's the
And
one that's been in when they've been winning.
mhm.
Nathan Rourke, and you didn't have, nobody had this in what was it, August, when Rourke all of a sudden signed,
Yeah,
and BA was dealing with a knee injury, and Rourke
right.
comes in. Nobody had this on their bingo card. That's for sure.
No.
I guess really the two big thoughts I have from this game. First of all, I do want to praise their defense because they made some
Sure.
big stops inside the 5.
Yep.
It's something that can give them some momentum going into the playoffs. The defense has had a tough year, but they came up and made big stops in, I mean, the game didn't mean a whole lot, but at the same time, 3 times Montreal gets inside the 5 and BC turns them away.
Yeah.
That's going to give you something to carry into the playoffs, that's for sure. The other is you go back to August, you go back to the Nathan Rourke signing. Even if you know what you know now, how are you not doing that? Like nobody would be criticizing that signing back in August for sure. I don't even know if you do it now because of course Nathan Rourke had a rough transition back to the CFL from the NFL.
Mhm.
It didn't go like 2022 like everybody expected. But when you can secure your future at quarterback with a guy that you have that much faith in, and it's a hometown guy, and you can build a franchise around, even if you know that this season goes the way it goes, I don't know how you don't pull the trigger on that, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. And in recent years, they've had their pick of wide receivers. So,
Mm-hmm.
sure, I don't see. Yeah, you are correct. I mean, they're still going to make the playoffs. They still have a chance to make some noise in the playoffs. I mean, nothing is impossible. We've seen the impossible, quote unquote, happen in the CFL playoffs. So,
But we
uh,
are but we are setting up a weird situation though that if BC gets hot,
uh,
wins the West Semi, West Final, hosts the Grey Cup at home, wins it, they
Jesus,
might be sending
wow.
along their Grey Cup winning quarterback and saying, "Okay, thanks for the memories. We've got our starter of the future sitting here."
Right. Wow. Now that takes some imagination, Joe. I gotta say.
It does, but who is dominant enough that you can expect BC to have a chance against? They're not running into Montreal and
Well,
Toronto until the Grey
right.
Cup, and Winnipeg and Saskatchewan haven't been dominant all year. Winnipeg got on
Well,
that nice roll for a while,
yeah,
but they're not the same team as they've been the last 3 years.
yeah, yeah. But they are a very good team.
Right.
I can't believe
But
you're knocking me down from the Bombers here.
what I'm saying though is BC doesn't it you can't completely eliminate that scenario from your mind. That's
Yes,
in play.
right. As long as look, if the defense can show up, great. Great.
Mhm.
But it's not something they've been doing. And I mean, you talk about the stops. Well, Cody had some passes broken up, and I really thought too. This one really floored me. Was the one where Davis Alexander is in the game. And I was thinking about what I talked about last week as, Alexander is objectively probably the inferior quarterback next to Cody, but he's exciting. he peeled out from like the 32. All of a sudden, the field was wide open. He almost scored, but he didn't want to get hit by like three guys, and so he slid, as though he were, winning, as though the Alouettes were winning by 6 with 30 seconds to play. Like he didn't want the clock to stop. It was so wild. It was just like, and as an end result, I mean, we might have had 10. The game would have looked a little bit different.
Business decision, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I can't
business
fault
decision.
that.
No, of course not. Of course not. Jesus, he was probably explicitly told to go down.
Yeah. And if the Grey Cup's on the line, he's running through 3 guys, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He converts that. If this is the playoffs, no problem. So I was happy to see that too, and I was happy to see the Beverett interception. Even if we lost the game, makes our record look a little bit worse. It's okay. We have the division clinched. It's a good warm up for the playoffs. Let's hope. Okay. So I can talk briefly here about royalretros.com. They are our sponsor. They are a top quality seller of merchandise like hoodies, like t-shirts, like baseball caps, like the assorted items you would expect from a quality sports paraphernalia store, featuring the logos and the names of the great defunct teams and defunct leagues of the past, like the WHA, the USFL, the ABA, and in baseball, the Negro Leagues. Really interesting stuff they have there. They have some remakes, which is the classic logos redone in new and interesting styles. Best of all, for listeners of this show, you get 10% off by using the promo code RWBCFL. That's Rouge, White, and Blue Canadian Football League at checkout. RoyalRetros.com, promo code RWBCFL for 10% off. Tell them we sent you. Oh, you won't have to because you'll be using the promo code RWBCFL. Okay, so that's RoyalRetros.com. Now, next week, let's do the playoff scenario for next week. What's the story, Joe?
It's simple. If Winnipeg gains a point in the standings, or Saskatchewan loses a point in the standings, Winnipeg wins the West. If Winnipeg gains 0 points in the standings and Saskatchewan gains 2 points, Saskatchewan wins the West.
Okay.
And how does that happen? Winnipeg losing and Saskatchewan winning. Any sort of tie in this scenario, in any way, shape, or form, gives Winnipeg the West.
Okay. Means that there are really only 2 games of consequence next week. They're both on Saturday night. We have Winnipeg, or they're both on Saturday. I don't think Saturday night. They're both on Saturday. We open with Winnipeg at Montreal. But first, I want to ask you, Calgary at Saskatchewan. This is an open and shut case, right? I mean, Saskatchewan's going to win. Calgary is chasing a legendarily long losing streak at this point. Saskatchewan, you've got in this game, the second game, right, Joe?
Even if they bench their starters when they find out Winnipeg's won, they're winning that game.
Yeah. I think the Riders want to go out with a win. They've been on a nice roll lately. They have that home game in the playoffs, at least one game, right? Okay.
Yep, and if they have the West to win for, this might get ugly.
Right. Now, the Saturday game, the early game, is Winnipeg at Montreal. And I've been trying to decide how much Montreal wants to make Winnipeg miserable. If this is a factor, or if they're just going to, they're going to take that football attitude. We don't care who we play. We don't care where we play. And just do the smart thing and play conservatively, probably Fajardo first half, Davis Alexander second half, defensive second string in the second half, etc. So I guess I'd like to know, Joe, what is your take? How do you think Montreal is going to play this game?
I don't think they have any reason to go extremely let's go play our starters the whole game and try to win.
Right.
At the same time, they're going to get some playing time because they have that bye week next week.
Mm-hmm.
So it might feel like Winnipeg fans might remember Toronto at Winnipeg last year, where Toronto came in with absolutely nothing to play for because they had clinched. They got like a month left to play, so they're going to play some
Yeah.
backups. They
Yeah.
play Cameron Dukes for the first 3 quarters, and they're sticking with the Bombers. They put in Brian Scott in the fourth to get him some experience, and that's when the game turns to Winnipeg's side because it was a close game. Scott can't get the offense moving for Toronto. Winnipeg scores and goes ahead and it stays that way.
Mhm.
I could see a similar thing happening. Cody plays the first half. It's 10-7. Davis Alexander goes in for the second half. A couple of backups on the offensive line. Receivers go in. It could be just enough to give Winnipeg, even with the sputtering offense, enough to win the game and make Saskatchewan hate Montreal forever, or at least until next week.
Right. Right. Wow. Okay. What if it's a tie?
Fine. Winnipeg wins the West that way. I'm not proud. Let's make it happen in whatever way we can make it this year. This year has been all about, okay, we don't have the bazooka we had last year.
Right. Yeah.
Let's just get by with what we have.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's so far, 20 weeks into the season, Winnipeg's in position to win the West, even if it doesn't feel like they deserve to.
Mhm.
So we're not proud. Let's take whatever we can get, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I guess I'll go Winnipeg here too. I'm thinking that this is going to be a really low scoring game. I think that Winnipeg.
It's gonna have us at the edge of our seats. It's gonna
Yeah.
have the entire provinces of Manitoba and Saskatchewan going, come on, one big play. And of course they're rooting for for different teams in this.
Right.
But you better believe the entire province of Saskatchewan plus a sizable chunk of the rest of Canada is going to be sitting there going, come on, Montreal, don't bench your starters. Let's keep going. Let's get that one big play. Let's put Winnipeg away.
Mhm.
I don't think they're getting their wish, but I can't tell you that they won't either.
Montreal's second string defense is pretty good.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of guys. I mean, obviously we're not, Beverett and Sankey and, DeCoy and et cetera.
No, and a team that can blitz well does well against Winnipeg this year because the offensive line doesn't handle blitzing it very well.
Right.
You've noticed over the past 2-3 months that teams that aren't throwing everything they can at the Winnipeg offensive line and giving Zach time are getting picked apart.
Mhm.
But teams like Toronto that are attacking the offensive line and making Zach make quick decisions as opposed to giving him time are much more successful.
And
so
Montreal's,
even with backups in, you have Noel Thorpe. He likes to blitz.
Right.
More so than most of the coaches in the CFL at this point.
Right.
So Montreal can still make Winnipeg's day uncomfortable, even if they're not throwing their best out there.
Right. And the thing about Thorpe is the looks that he's been throwing this year. You don't know who's coming. You don't know who's coming. I mean, some of the guys on TSN, I don't know if I'd go this far, but some of the guys on TSN have been calling this positionless football. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but you see their point, right? Any of these linebackers are perfectly capable of dropping into coverage or hitting the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Any one of them. And so on any given play, could be any one of them. Could be the fifth man. Could be our fifth linebacker. It's substituted for this play. Could be him coming for you. So, yeah, I think that ultimately when it comes down to it, Montreal has a nice matchup against Winnipeg if we can put up enough points on the board, which has been a question for me for basically the second half of this season. So can we put up enough?
I think this is a race to 20. If any team gets to 20, they've won the game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking like 1916 maximum, I think. So
and watch, it's 35-33 with half the fourth quarter to go. And we're sitting here going, what kind of game is this again?
Well, I'm glad I'm not playing fantasy this week. Yeah, I think I'll go with Davis Alexander. Yeah, okay. Right. Okay. So let's close it up for this week.
We're not even touching the other ones? Fine by me.
I mean, if you want to check them off the box, look, I think that if you really want to talk about these games, I think Bo Levy is going to have another great game. I think, They're playing Hamilton. Like I said last week, Hamilton is playing loose. They've got nothing to lose. They're just out there playing football. They're not thinking about any. They're not
And
chasing any.
Ottawa's got to find a way to get some momentum
Right,
going into the playoffs. So
right. So I would expect a lot of points in this game. I mean, Hamilton defense, they may be playing loose, but they're still, not that, talented. Let's say they're not that aggressive. I mean, yeah, Chris Jones has been nice for them, but they still give up a lot of points. They're a
sure,
bit more
but they've
aggressive.
stabilized instead of
Right.
getting worse. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It looks like they know what they're doing now, finally. There are guys that rush the passer now. So, yeah, there is a coherent defense in Hamilton. So, yeah, probably Hamilton will win. This might be the highest scoring game of the week. If you want to go Toronto, Edmonton, I mean, do you really need to pick here? I don't think Toronto has taken any prisoners. I don't care if they have this thing clinched. I think they're going to run up a lot of points. Now, it'll be interesting to see what Trey Ford does in the last game here in Edmonton. But I'm still thinking Toronto is they're gonna win. They're gonna try to win. They're gonna try some new plays, maybe with the second string. But I think Toronto's gonna play to win here, and I think they have enough.
Yeah,
So
I don't think I disagree. I would like to see
so
Trey Ford go off
yeah,
and make Toronto have to sweat, but we'll
yeah,
see.
it would be nice. It would
It,
be
it
nice.
feels like Toronto's defense though is one that wouldn't be undisciplined enough to let Trey Ford run around on them
Yeah.
all day and
Yeah.
cause havoc. So
Toronto looks slick right now. Toronto looks like pretty good. Again, this is shades of that 16-2 team, which is kind of what I was wondering all season. They had lost so many guys in this
it's like
offseason.
when are they back? When are they back? When
Right,
are they back? Okay, it's
right,
October. They're back.
right, right, exactly. Well, Chad came off the suspension. He's been getting into sync with everybody. They're still short guys on special teams from last year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, now they're looking a lot smoother. They've got the parts plugged in, and now they're looking good. It's scary. It's scary. But anyway, okay, let's wrap it there. We will be back next week, probably talking about a bunch of games that didn't matter very much and playoff preview.
Hopefully, 3 of them.
Right. One game matters. And so, yeah, and we'll be doing our playoffs preview as well. Yay, pick those games. All right. And so until next week, I'm Oz Davis. For my co-host Joe Pritchard, this has been the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast, a production of the Shotgun Sports Network. Talk to you next week.